Now, Michael Gormally, you've been involved in the credit union for a long time, I hear.
Over 50 years.
50 years. And how old is the credit union?
So, well, I was the founder member, so it's 51, I'd say. This is our 51st year in business.
In Westport?
Mm.
And how old is the organisation in general across the nation?
Since 63, and it was in the 1847, 1848 in Germany. A man called Refaisen, very interesting character as well, very compassionate man. The famine here in 1847, there was a famine throughout Europe, and it hit hard in Germany as well. And the farmers there, the previous year, the problem with 1847 was 1846, because there was a bad harvest in 1846. So in 1847, the farmers couldn't get credit from the grain suppliers for grain to sow. So Refaisen was a sharp man. He was the mayor of Flammerfeld, and he realised that if the farmer was in trouble, it was only a matter of time before the town was going to be in trouble. So he gathered round a group of friends, and they set up a fund from which they were to give loans to the farmers to buy the seed. And he was going grand, but he was an outspoken type, and he fell foul with the authorities. So they shipped him out of the area to teach him a lesson. And when he was gone, the union that he had set up, as he called it, a union for credit, it became moribund, as I described it. When he came back, nothing was happening, and he went round again. The farmers still had the same problem: no credit, no seed, no crops. So he went back to his friends and they said, "No thanks." So there was another guy who's another very brilliant original thinker. There were two different personality types. Refaisen was a very conscientious Christian, and he believed in fellowship of man and brotherhood and compassion. Schultz de Lich was a different guy, a very pragmatic man. And the tradesmen in the towns had the exact same problem. They couldn't get credit from the banks because they couldn't give collateral. Without collateral, there was no deal. And they were dependent on the suppliers to provide them with credit, and they were totally at their mercy. So they were only eking out an existence, because by the time they had paid exorbitant prices for the supply of raw materials, didn't have much left over after they sold their goods. So he set up another union, but the distinct difference was that the members had to save so much every week, and they had to get involved in the running of the organisation. And in addition, a very important difference between him and Refaisen was the liability of the members of Schultz de Lich's unions was limited to shares, whereas in Refaisen's it was unlimited. And that's where the concept of a common bond came in, because you had to know who you were going to get into business with. So there had to be some way where you came and contract them, and they only gave carriage credit because the people had no collateral. Very seldom they had the collateral, so it's based on the character. So you had to some way of coming in contact with them to be able to assess their character and have knowledge of the character. So the concept of a common bond was, and it's still the foundation for a credit union. Here and throughout the world, although in America they've moved away from it, still have the common bond now, they just have a field of membership, which is a good bit different. But anyhow, Refaisen had enough savvy to copy a lot of the things that Schultz de Lich, he introduced limited liability, he introduced regular tables, because that's the only way they could build up capital. The well-wishers and the people who he went to before were no longer interested, lost money last time around, and they weren't going to risk any more. So he built it up. Now, I've done some other research, but I have never been able to establish why Refaisen's unions were much more successful than Schultz de Lich's. Schultz de Lich's catered for urban people, your man Refaisen for farmers. So it was in Germany and it flourished there. It went to Italy, around Europe. And a journalist from Canada, Alphonse Desjardins, was touring Europe. He was a wealthy man, and a man with great curiosity, and again, a community spirit and compassion. And he knew the problems that the less well off had in access and credit in Canada and America. And he met his business to find out about these Refaisen's unions, as they were called then. And he imported the idea over to Canada, and he set one up in Quebec first, one of them. And then he used to come down to New York to report on activities in the legislature and things that were going on around Europe, and came into contact with a guy called, a very enlightened banker, Pierre J, who was chairman of the New York Bankers Federation. And he again was an enlightened man, and he saw that there was a problem for ordinary decent people in getting credit. The banks wouldn't touch them because they couldn't give them collateral, so they were out. So he realised this could do the business. So he started setting them up. And then another very enlightened individual, highly regarded and referenced in the early history of credit union, of management, development of management science, very enlightened employer who looked after the employees very well. He had profit sharing when it was never heard of. He treated them well, and he was very, very successful. And when he retired, he got interested in credit union. And actually, he employed a guy called Roy Bergman, who was a lawyer, and his job was to go around to the different states and set up enabling legislation to allow them to take off. And he bankrupted Bergman out of his pocket for 8 or 9 years. But he was getting a bit of impatient after that, and he was putting pressure on them to find their own system of funding. But that tradition of enlightened individuals with a little bit more education than most, and not a lot of them had what was the equivalent of third level education in those days, and they had the enlightenment and the confidence and the ability of themselves to analyse and produce solutions for problems, analyse them correctly, and then come up with a correct solution and implement it. And then it happened that Nora Herlihy and two other guys, two men, a fellow called Sean Ford was a baker, and a Seamus McCohen, who was a civil servant. And they were, again, people of thinking outside their own narrow interests. They were very perturbed about the economic situation in Ireland with lack of employment and the poverty. And they went to an extramural studies course in Maynooth College. And one of their lecturers was, I can't think of his name, it will come to me before we finish. He was, Professor Cornelius Lucy, later to be the Bishop of Cork and Ross. And he was a professor apparently of sociology, and when he was the conferring of the certificate at the graduation, he said to them, if you don't put what you've learned in this course to work for the benefit of the community, he said, it's not worth the throwing. And those three had, their ambition actually was to mobilise capital, to create workers' co-ops. Seamus McCohen was a very keen on the cooperative movement. He was well versed in the history of cooperatives, and to him it was a natural way forward because the cooperative movement put the power right at the lowest level where it was needed by the people who were operating. So a workers' co-op was what they wanted. So they were researching ways of mobilising capital, and Nora came across this idea of credit union, and we went to the States on a holiday and a fact-finding mission, and found out everything she could and made contacts. And when she came back, she unveiled the idea to her other two colleagues, and they were very enthusiastic. They said, this is the solution you need now to mobilise capital. People getting them saving in the credit union, and then we'll be able to set up workers' co-ops. And it expanded from there, and they were sharp enough now to set up an extension bureau and recruit people as enthusiastic as themselves. And each of the three of them were very persuasive and good public speakers that made it their business to be good at it. And
what year was that?
The 1963, 1958, and in 1963 or thereabouts, an interesting thing happened. Another great pioneer, the late Frank Duff, founder of the Legion of Mary, was a man who looked outward as well and was quite conscious of the problems in Ireland, not just in relation to religion and everything, but poverty and everything else. And they were trying to attract men into the Legion of Mary, and you went to a meeting once a week, and you had to do 2 hours work apostolate. And generally it was visiting people and encouraging them it was promoting the rosary, encouraging them to say the rosary. And women, it was easy enough to get it, but difficult to get men. And as it happened, the late Tom Duffy, who was the chief estimator with PJ Kelly and Company, building contractors, was in the Legion Mary. He had been when he was a very young lad.
What was the Legion of Mary?
It's a lay apostolate organisation.
With the function of
promoting religion.
Religion, okay.
No. So we were in it. There was the local groups. Frank Duff apparently was a great admirer of the way the Roman Empire was organised. So he had presidiums and he had legionnaires, and the members were legionnaires, and each local branch was a presidium. And the next governing body up was the Curia. Now, there's a huge lot of coincidences on us being here now, 51 years later. But anyhow, Tom Duffy, we were trying to expand the membership, and as it happened, a lad from Cronus called Philip Curran came as a bank clerk to the Ulster Bank, and we used to hang out in the tea cosy, right? And waylay any innocent-looking person passing by to try and recruit them for the Legion. And of course we met him when he came in, and instead of a cup of tea or coffee, whatever it was, all the non-alcoholics congregated there and spent their time. But we were talking to him, and he was saying, well, I don't know, I don't think promoting the rosary wouldn't be my cup of tea, to be honest, lads. But he said, if you're doing something really worthwhile, like what, we said, why don't you set up a credit union? I might be interested. What is a credit union? So by sheer coincidence, his two brothers were founding members of the Credit Union. Clonus was the second one to be set up in the country. The first one was in Dunor Avenue by a great group of gay-goers from Winchester, Dunor. And a lot of ladies that were active there were involved in the ICA. The ICA teachers and priests provided the inspiration for getting credit union expanded in the country.
Well, was Philip Curran a banker?
He was a bank clerk.
And what did his bosses think of this? Setting up in opposition to themselves?
Didn't mind.
Didn't mind.
Interestingly enough, that partly was because, first of all, he was new in the job and he was maybe a little bit naive. But of all the three banks, the most liberal in their attitude to credit unions was the Ulster Bank.
Ulster Bank.
And they got an awful lot of business because when you started saving, the first recommendation was set it up in the post office, you get better interest there. But before you launch, you will definitely need a bank account. So you need to approach the local banks. And generally, you get the run around from the other two, but the Ulster, and they were the natural home because a man from there had to set it up. So we did set it up. And we studied for 6 months. And Nora Hurley conducted a correspondence course with a study group from Dublin.
Okay.
She had a home in Shandon Gardens. She was a national teacher in one of the parts of the inner city in Dublin, and saw the impact of poverty on the kids coming in half-starved and not being able to concentrate or anything on what they were doing, and in rags and all that sort of thing. So she was moved, as well as had such compassion. So she was a great bit of stuff. She was not a woman to let the grass grow under her feet. So she carried out the correspondence course, and we met in the library.
And what did you learn in the correspondence course? Business methods or banking or?
No, I'll tell you what, the first thing we learned about the Industrial and Private Societies Acts. They had imported and developed and amended a set of standard rules from America. And we learned all about them. And we learned about, as I said, the law. And then we visited other credit unions that were in existence and saw how the credit committee worked, and the board of directors worked, and the supervisory committee worked, and all the other committees. We sat in with them. They were great at sharing information in those days. They were open arms. So the St. Patrick's Drama Group, the Legion of Mary supplied 3, Marty Curry and myself, and Tom Duffy was involved at an early stage. But when the thing was launched, he stepped back again because he was lost on his place and he was interested in promoting other things. And by the way, the other project that we set up when he was active, and indeed Michael Morden, who owns the electrical firm that did the work for us, had a high influence on this because he was in the local curia.
Within this building at the moment.
That's right.
He's in the building at the moment.
It's amazing that he should be involved at the beginning to give us the first push for the first 50 years, and now he's involved in for the push for the next 50 years. So it's really very, very nice. And we, after 3 months, you knew you were progressing. You get your stuff. She had a little catechism as well, a lot of questions about credit union, you had to know all that. She sent you down a list of questions. Now, it was an open book type examination, and you filled in the answers, sent them off to you. If you're progressing well, that's how she monitored you herself. And after 3 months, you knew you were on your way if you're allowed to start saving. And we did. And we put the money in the post office first. And we operated the library. And then when we launched, the late John Jennings, very generously of him, let us use the bus office in the railway hotel on a Saturday night for the evening mass and last mass on Sunday. And that's where we did business. Then...
Who was John Jennings?
John Jeffers, sorry.
Oh, Jeffers.
John
John, okay.
Jeffers.
The hotel, yeah.
So,